a lot of things that have happened in the Celo ecosystem this year, starting with the major announcement. So for those of us who may not be familiar, let's kind of summarize what happened in July.
Yeah, that was just a few days before the Pragma event in Paris that C-Labs, which is one of the core development teams for the Celo Layer 1 blockchain, put forward a proposal for Celo to become an Ethereum Layer 2. And, this is something that had been discussed in the community, in the past. But until that point, really was sort of the kind of rise of EigenLayer and EigenDA enabling a world where, the thing that makes, one of the things that makes Celo special today, very, very, very low fees, enabling microtransactions, applications for micropayments, was finally possible as an L2. And so, we were in Paris at ECC discussing it with the community and the broader community, and there was just a lot of excitement. Now a lot has happened since, which I'm sure we'll get into.
We'll definitely get into.
But it's been a fun half year.
It doesn't even feel like half a year. I thought it was like 2 months ago. Let's kind of zoom out a bit. Walk us through what Celo's original vision was, and before this L2 transition and this proposal, what was Celo? Why did you decide to do it that way, and how has the vision of the company changed?
Yeah, so Celo is an Esperanto word, means purpose, and the mission and sort of the North Star that got us to start Celo was really to take this beautiful technology and enable use cases that are oftentimes not feasible today, and that kind of are always in sort of a broader kind of concept of a regenerative, financial system. And what that means is that you have a system where, for example, the growth of the economy directly has positive externalities, positive impact on things like, the health of a community or climate, right? The health of our planet. And, that is something that's really been possible by a lot of primitives being built over the last few years, like tokenizing real world assets and creating currencies that wrap around those assets. Now, when we started, so Celo was, the beginnings of Celo go back to 2017. We spent a bunch of time in the global south, places like, Nairobi, Buenos Aires, understanding, okay, what are the shortcomings of the financial system that, this technology can solve, particularly with use cases like universal basic income, microcredit, microwork, things that we were passionate about. And at the time, we built a wallet on Ethereum, but we quickly realized there was just a bunch of hurdles that felt impossible to overcome at the time. Obviously proof of work was slow, right? The fees were high, it took a long time for transactions to settle. So really kind of useless for microtransactions, what we wanted to see. Also, we saw this complexity when people wanted to, were first onboarded and then were trying to do something with their wallet. They had to get the native token, ETH, right? So you send someone some stable coin, but they still need to get a second token, and even just the mental kind of model there, the complexity for someone who's not, spending 24/7 in crypto was just too high, right? And so we took a lot of those insights, forked Ethereum, actually launched Celo was the first proof of stake EVM, but then also built in some of those features. So for example, on Celo, since the very early days, you were able to pay for transactions in tokens like stablecoins. Super useful, right? If I'm sending you, $5 in a stablecoin, this is the first thing you get in your wallet, and now you can immediately use the wallet, send the money on to a friend, or put it up, kind of in a lending protocol, get yield, or, do whatever you want. And that's really powerful. And that actually, finding those little things over the years that kind of removes the hurdles for mass adoption has been sort of a red thread through Celo's journey. And then basically leading up to July, where suddenly, wow, we can bring all these things to Ethereum, benefit from Ethereum security, but not give up on the things that make Celo special.
That's an amazing kind of a summary of how we got there. Was it, maybe just to kind of understand this, was it a community proposal, or was it something you as a team and the engineering from the protocol side have been thinking about it and now it's just finally possible? what sort of sparked the actual post to exist?
Yeah, I think there's, in sort of communities, there's always chatter, right? People are discussing things, people throwing stuff on the forum, or, at conferences, there's talk. And so this general idea had existed for a while, but it took sort of, until that moment in the summer when C-Labs really laid out sort of what the architecture could look like. And, one piece I mentioned already was kind of EigenDA for data availability, but there were other pieces too, right? There was a very thoughtful kind of, proposal for leveraging the existing Celo validators, which range from big companies like Google, Deutsche Telekom. Actually, this is the first EVM validator that Google ran. Now they're doing others too, all the way down to like small kind of grassroots validators, right? So there's it's actually funny. There is a Grassroot Economics, is a company in Kenya that's doing community currencies, and there's Impact Market, which is doing Learn and Earn and microcredit and UBI in the global south. So it's really, I always think of our validators as an asset of the platform, of the community. And in the proposal, basically it was like, okay, well, these guys, these groups around the world can be the basis for a decentralized sequencer. And I think especially that piece got the broader Ethereum community quite excited, because one of the major criticisms, apart from sort of maybe the fees, right, with kind of current L2s is sort of the centralization of the sequencer.
I actually totally forgot about that part, and that's kind of the part, because you actually get to see that live and learn from as any other L2 service, because you already have that infrastructure and that community built up. One other kind of thing, to the extent we can kind of go into some details here, is
actually, you know what? I just realized I didn't even answer your question. So then what happened? C-Labs put forward the proposal. It was discussed sort of in Paris. We had a bunch of events and community came together, and then it was put to a temperature check, to an on-chain vote, and that was overwhelmingly, I think everybody voted yes on it. And so this happened shortly after ECC, and sort of since then the C-Labs team has kind of actually started the development on the stack. But we've also have seen other, players sort of in the broader L2 stack, kind of industry come forward and put forward proposals. And so it's actually turned into just an amazing, I want to call it collaboration and sort of ideas exchange of understanding, okay, well, first off, what's sort of the state of the art in terms of Ethereum scalability and L2 tech, but also, and this is, I think, kind of maybe more specific to Celo, what is the right framework for the Celo community to ultimately make the final decision? And it may be that the framework and the way we weigh kind of things, right, may differ for someone else making that choice in the future. And, we've actually had a few other bigger chains come forward and as well say this is a path that they think is interesting since we put the proposal forward. But, ultimately it has to be something that works best for Celo, right, in terms of the ultimate decision. But it doesn't mean that whatever stack, the Celo community picks is the best L2 stack. It just means it's the best stack for Celo.
Now, and that's a very important distinction too. For again, the people here, that temperature check got 600 votes saying, no, you shouldn't do this, and 56 million saying this is a good idea. So
you have the numbers, good.
So that kind of feels good. Well, the most interesting piece about the thread was that whole conversation was public. And that's kind of very unique to our space, because you can't just go make a backdoor decision saying we're going to change everything, whether it's our economics or how the infrastructure works. That was a very long public thread with very thoughtful responses. Vitalik commented, Sandeep commented, we got Sriram from Eigen Layer who commented. To the stuff that you're willing to kind of go into details around, could you share some of their comments on what they express, positive and negative sort of sentiment around, and what were kind of the things that they were concerned about or happy about?
Yeah, I think there's a few themes I think that come up, right? And I think there's, and this is probably also, as I personally wrap my head around it, there's, the world today looks very different than the world a year ago in terms of where we think sort of L2 scalability is going or can go. And in the short term, what you'll see is you'll have a few, ecosystems ultimately forming around the sort of predominant stacks. And given the architecture, you'll have benefits within that ecosystem. For example, around bridging assets seamlessly, right, and sharing costs in terms of the actual settling on kind of Ethereum, and so there's kind of like there's a short-term component, right, in terms of what are the immediate benefits of these different stacks, but then there's also kind of a long-term question, which is really, okay, what does this look like in the long term? And I think in the long term, I think there's some general consensus or increasing consensus, right, that ultimately it should be possible to seamlessly move assets and messages between any layer 2, no matter what stack they're on, right? And there's some technical requirements for that to happen, but it's certainly, if there's a feasible path towards that. Now that path though will take some time, right? And we've all been there for the merge. We've all seen sort of, these things take, you're operating on like live operating decentralized systems, which is a lot harder than, changing the strategy within a single company, right? And so in many ways, I expect that to take, several years. And so the trade-offs between what is right in the short term and what can be the right longer term kind of solution, right, are there. And those are very hard to evaluate. But I think when you see people weighing in, right, there's some thoughtfulness around like, what are the short-term trade-offs, right, in terms of decentralization around the sequencer, and there's a lot of excitement for that, but also seeing community members chime in, people that are running applications on Celo, big companies like Opera with MiniPay, small projects like Good Dollar were saying, hey, what does it mean for us? Are the fees going to change, right? What is it going to cost? Do I have to do anything? Do I have to kind of migrate to some new environment? And I think it's been, really great to have this out in the open, because you answer once, you say, no, actually, this is like, there's a hard fork, I've done a bunch of these, like, you're going to be okay. And it kind of not just answers one person's question, but it kind of is collective
satisfies
learning.
everybody, yeah.
It's collective learning within the
and
whole
also
community.
they can bring up things that you may have missed, which is even better, because then you're now actually working towards solving a problem instead of just shouting at somebody.
Yeah, exactly. No, and one thing that's come out of it, so we got a bunch of inbound, and people like, we want to know even more about this journey you're on, and like, this is relevant for us, or we're building a part of the stack. And so one thing that the team has done, which I give them a lot of credit for, because they're incredibly busy with the technical work, but there's a start as a Twitter Spaces, L2 Unplugged, and Vitalik has been on, and Dankrat, and I think Shriram was on recently as well, and others. And it's basically a kind of technical deep dive on sort of the different, aspects of this process, of the stack. And, I expect that to get even more interesting in the coming weeks, right? As there's some of these more concrete trade-offs that will have to be made or being battled out in the community. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend checking out L2 Unplugged. But yeah, so that's been, I didn't expect this to become such a, public, in a way, exercise beyond our immediate community. Like, I thought, okay, of course, projects will want to be involved, and that's why we moved it to the forum. But it's been great to see the broader Ethereum community participate.
And that's incredible. It kind of just shows you that everybody here wants everybody to win. And it's like always amazing to see that people who maybe even right now are future competitors still want everybody to succeed.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've been thinking about this a while, and like, the big competitor is the traditional financial system, right? It's regulators that don't understand this technology, that are trying to protect incumbents, right? That don't understand the freedom, the economical power that this technology can bring. And what's been like really nice as part of this process is that even though, sometimes you're kind of talking to people that you could from the outset perceive as competitors.
It's like, you're not competing with other L2. That's
No,
you're competing with everybody else who doesn't want any L2 to exist.
Right. No, I think there's a great sense of collectivism and cooperation among really everyone that's part of that bigger kind of Ethereum scaling picture, and that gives me hope, right? Because the last thing we should do right now is
Civil wars.
start these little fights with each other where we're in this tiny echo chamber over here, where there's the real thing, the real war happens over here.
Absolutely. So I guess what's happened since July?
Yeah.
Tell us about the last 5 months.
So let's see. Well, first, I think most important thing, CLIP's team has been doing a bunch of technical work, including most recently when EigenDA went on testnet. I think it took them less than 48 hours to implement it. So that was really awesome.
Wow.
But yeah, Polygon came forward with a proposal. I think Sandeep is up after, right? So
He's up next. He's going to get equally grilled on this. Don't worry.
ZK Singh, the Meta Labs folks, put a very thoughtful proposal. There's a few other conversations were happening that sort of in the broader ecosystem. But yeah, it's definitely, when the first proposal, had OP stack, EigenDA, and sort of had made a bunch of assumptions based on some initial conversations and what was available publicly at the time. But as you all know, building in the space, the space moves at like an insane speed, right? So for a lot of the stuff that we're considering, there isn't even like proper documentation written yet, right? And it's changing on a weekly basis. And so it's been really great to be now kind of very closely connected to a bunch of these different groups and really kind of drink from the fire hose in terms of their roadmaps and what they think they can deliver in 6 months, 9 months, right? And align ourselves with that. So that's probably been the biggest, sort of also unexpected, part of the process in these last few months.
I mean, that's, well, I guess the question I really want to ask you is, the July announcement was about being on LP stack, and now kind of a new player has joined the game. You have now other choices, or at least other proposals coming in. Does that shift your calculus? Are you seriously considering them? How do you think about choices now? And kind of what does that mean in terms of making a new decision or keeping the same decision?
Yeah. So actually, C-Labs put out just a few days ago, there were some initial kind of questions or criteria in the initial post, and I think there was a good set of things to kind of think about, but they've since gone back and also with some of the community input, right, put together a much more comprehensive framework. And again, this is a framework that I think is probably broadly applicable, with the one difference that different projects will likely have different weights on the different kind of criteria. But it touches on things like, obviously, technical features, what kind of a migration would look like, alignment with Ethereum, because even there's kind of a spectrum of differences, and kind of what does the ecosystem look like, what's sort of the mission, right? Is there alignment in terms of the kind of projects? But I think also increasingly, right, I mean, especially as it comes to thinking about these different stacks as almost like economic zones in the short term, I think there's a good question around economic alignment, right? What does the stack gain from Celo being part of the stack, right? I mean, we know what we can bring to the table, in terms of on and off ramps, like kind of real world access, right? We're now, I think, 6th biggest project chain. I think it's across all projects on Token Terminal in terms of daily active users, right?
The one,
yeah.
I was going to say, like a pretty good mutual benefit here is that now the Ethereum ecosystem gets to benefit off of that infrastructure and just applications. Yep. And you can already mention you're the 6th biggest kind of chain out there. I guess I'm just curious, like, what are some of the bigger applications that you think are super cool, or that you like, or just are even big, that now the Ethereum ecosystem can also enjoy?
Exactly, and I think the way I sort of think about Celo is we are, in a way, because of the work we've done, particularly in the global south and markets across Africa, right, where the hard work is not necessary. It's basically creating or enabling a user experience, right, where people can seamlessly onboard, right, from fiat mobile money to an on-chain wallet, and then use that wallet easily, ideally on a mobile device, right, to participate in this digital economy. And that journey is key. And I think as an ecosystem, we've done an incredible job. And I don't give myself much credit for that, but there's a lot of really dedicated projects, often operating directly in market with communities, right, that have created sort of that really decentralized, I mean, in this time we can really use that word, infrastructure, right, where if you're on-ramping in Kenya or Ghana today, you're likely using a provider that's based there, right, that can facilitate that with mobile money. Now, when you have that and you imagine Celo as sort of your kind of on-ramp for real-world users to Ethereum, right, or in the first step to that kind of stack, right, that's very powerful because, there's a lot of applications on Celo, but if you look at any kind of, collection of L2 chains, right, using a certain stack, then there's potentially a much broader range of applications. And so there's network effects that come from that. And so for us, it's really exciting to see, okay, what are others building? What are the applications? What's the utility we can bring to users that today are on Celo, right, without them having to worry about kind of having a more difficult user experience. Yeah, I don't think answered your questions about what applications we should.
You did. Don't worry. Like I would have called you out if that hadn't happened. No, I guess maybe, what I was kind of curious about was like maybe getting a couple of names of what these popular applications are. In addition to these effects. Yeah,
we can run through a couple of these. I mean, it's so coming back to this notion of regenerative finance. I don't know how many people here have heard the term ReFi, so I don't have to give. Yeah, okay, a good number. Oh, that's great, actually. A year ago, I think it was like one hand would have gone up.
Did you misspell DeFi?
Yes. So it's really interesting because in a way, it's in order to create financial application that have sort of this positive externality on a community or from a climate perspective, right? You need building blocks that can either enable that to be added to an application that already exists, right? Or you actually invent, sort of ReFi native applications that don't exist today. So an example for the first category would be like, okay, you have some DEX, AMM, and you're just taking a portion of your fees and you programmatically buy carbon offset, plastic offsets, biodiversity credits, whatever, and so as your AMM, as your volumes grow, you're having this sort of positive externality. I mean, that's kind of a pretty simple, thing to do, but it's great if you can do it, right? And maybe people will start using your DEX versus another DEX because they care about that, right? And it allows them to take action with something that they're already doing. Now, the kind of ReFi native application would be someone, for example, creating a community currency or a system of community currencies that leverage these, kind of tokenized natural capital assets like, tokenized rainforest or carbon credit or plastic credit or biodiversity credit, whatever it is, and leverage those assets as collateral for example, a, flat coin, stable coin that's used within that community. And thereby ensuring that the community assets are actually used maybe for the first time in some cases, and also that the wealth created stays within that community. And those are pretty powerful concepts, right? And something when you sort of fast forward, you could imagine down the road, right, where, a central bank of a research-rich country has those tokenized resources in their reserve and not US dollars or euros or Bitcoin. And nothing against Bitcoin. That's a first good step. So I think that's been really interesting. And so some examples for the first, right, is basically, I mean, even Celo itself, Celo is ultra green money, so ultra sound money, but ultra green in the sense that in addition to burning Celo, we also kind of with every transactions, you sort of have a small percentage of the, fees go towards on-chain offsets, right? So we've been doing that for a long time. That concept extends to a bunch of applications on Celo, including, some of the kind of staking solutions, like liquid staking solutions. You have on the other end of the spectrum, you do have those community currencies that I just sort of mentioned as examples. Collectivo has done this successfully in Curacao, tokenizing food forests and coral reefs, and actually launching a guilder for the island that's used there in commerce. But sort of in between that spectrum, you do have sort of a lot of applications that are kind of really either creating building blocks like, plastics is, creating sort of tokenized plastics, kind of like recycling kind of in a way like credits, similar to like a carbon credit, but for plastic. And FC Barcelona recently used it for an NFT collection where every NFT had sort of a plastic kind of offset guarantee in a way.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
So that was really cool, right? But these things are enabled because the primitives exist, and in some cases they exist uniquely on Celo. So yeah, I mean,
now everybody benefits.
We covered, yeah. And yeah, so it's cool. I think there's one other thing I'll mention because I think that's really powerful. And, COP is happening right now in Dubai. And, there's obviously a lot of conversation around, okay, collective climate action, what are the right tools? And, we need better, carbon credit markets and whatnot. But what I love is some of the experimentation that I've seen in the Celo ecosystem. There's a concept called conservation basic income. And the idea is that you're putting money directly into communities. And so if you're a community that's basically protecting, sorry, too much talking, say like in the Congo, the peatlands, right, that are a massive carbon store, right, carbon sink, then there's now a payment going directly to that community, or micropayments to the members of a community directly to their wallets, right, that they can use in a local context, use it with mobile money, right, use it to kind of start building wealth. And in a way that's beautiful, right, because the ultimate goal, and this is even if you look at climate finance, a lot has been happening in moving away from sort of things like carbon credit markets to more kind of bilateral agreements between countries, right, to, I think in the long run, basically these kind of community collaborations that really, in order to pull that off at a global scale, you need Web3 infrastructure, right? You need the ability for people to receive microtransactions, stream kind of micropayments on an ongoing basis, and have good tooling around kind of creating transparency and sort of proofs around a certain action being taken. So 2 examples in that category would be Gainforest, which also is competing right now with a bunch of other projects and people from the Celo ecosystem in the Biodiversity X Prize, which is pretty exciting. Right. And Sylvie, who is paying people stablecoin to plant trees and help the trees kind of grow and again become
awesome.
So nice. Really, really beautiful.
No, that's a great regen ecosystem community you got there. So again, maybe to wrap things up, what are the next steps of this transition? What does the next 6 to 12 months look like, and what can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, look, the team is working super hard. I mean, we want to make this as quickly as possible, right? And we were excited about this transition to happen. One hard fork, actually, I didn't mention this earlier, one hard fork already happened. There's another hard fork required to complete this transition. And the timeline right now is, I mean, there's been more proposals coming in, so it's shifted a little bit, but by early next year, there's going to be another proposal, another vote, right, on kind of the path forward, and then the transition can happen. And I mean, in the meantime, you're not, I think this is the nice thing, you're not really...
Nothing is stopping, yeah.
You're not sacrificing anything, right? I mean, it's anything you build will kind of work. And so, yeah, I mean, for anyone building this weekend, definitely consider sort of Celo as your, is your chain to kind of build on, and like hopefully some of the examples I gave make you interested in using some of the building blocks that exist. A lot of our team is here. I think they see some of them in the audience even. So definitely come ask us for help. We're friendly. But, I'd love to see more people build, even if it's a game or you're building an AMM, think about is there kind of, things you can build into your product, right, to kind of create sort of that regenerative effect.
Amazing. Well, Rene, thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts, and can't wait to see Celo on an L2.
Thank you, Kartik.